Welcome to the Art and Soul Podcast. I'm Alicia, your fellow dreamer and guide on this path of healing. This podcast is our sanctuary, a place where artists, creatives, and sensitive souls like you and me can come to recharge and find inspiration. You'll find tips and tools to help you on your awakening journey. Let's dive deep and discover the magic inside of us. Hello, thank you for joining me for another podcast and for listening each week. I am so happy that you're here and I'm so excited to share with you this week. Last week, if you listened to the podcast, we were talking about getting out of that feeling of stuckness, that energetic blocked feeling, whether it is creatively or personally, just that feeling of not being able to move forward, hitting that energetic wall, so to speak. And as we were talking about ways to move through that or move out of that, one of the things that kept coming up was this practice of meditation. And as I was talking about it, I was realizing that so many people have misconceptions or just these generalized ideas and views of meditation that aren't necessarily true or accurate. And so I kind of just wanted to set the record straight today and talk to you a little bit about what meditation really is, why we do it, and maybe dispel some of those fears that you have about the idea of sitting down with yourself and getting really still and quiet. I don't know where it came from, but some people have this idea that meditation is supposed to be clearing your mind. I don't know who's spreading those rumors, but that is not true. That is not what meditation is. So as we get into it today, we're going to talk about what it really is, why you shouldn't be afraid of it, and how you can really utilize different forms of meditation in your own healing journey. I had several kind of funny experiences with meditation peppered throughout my childhood and early years. I remember a choreographer I had having us all lay down and close our eyes and imagining we were like at a beach and walking us through all the details of the beach. And I remember thinking like, this is really silly. What are we doing? And part of the idea of meditation too was silly to me a lot of times because no one ever explained what it was doing or why we were doing it other than just like for relaxation. And that is one of the purposes of meditation, but it is not the only purpose, and in my mind, it's not even the real main point of meditating. So it's really funny to me that that was kind of how I perceived meditation for a big portion of my life. And I think a lot of people do. A lot of you also know I grew up in a Christian home, so you were kind of like allowed to meditate only if you were quote unquote meditating on scripture. But other than that, you were only allowed to pray, and you weren't really supposed to ask questions or go inside of yourself and look for answers. That was kind of like a big no-no thing. And there was this perception that clearing your mind left room for something evil or something bad to enter your mind. And I don't know if that existed in all Christian circles, but where I specifically grew up, that was kind of the narrative. So I kind of want to dispel that also for any of you that have that kind of mentality around it, whether that's conscious or subconscious, just based on your upbringing or the people that you were around. And part of it, I think, is because meditation is so revered in other cultures, especially in cultures that practice Hinduism and practice Buddhism. And so I think there's this idea from a lot of the Christian or more Western religious circles that because it's practiced by Eastern religious circles that it's like wrong or bad. I'm here to tell you Jesus tells us to meditate. He doesn't say it in those words, but he does. And I'm more than happy to get into that conversation with you at some point if anyone is interested in that. But that's not really why I'm here. I just wanted to share about my own personal introduction to meditation. So that was kind of my first experience with the idea of meditation. And then I don't think I revisited the topic again until 2017 when I was really going through kind of the depths of my feeling of stuckness, my ego death, my full-on breakdown before the ascension. And even then, I didn't have really anyone to show me what to do or tell me how to meditate. I was just kind of looking for different options that would help me not feel so crazy and not feel like I was alone, and to help me find answers both about myself and my life that I wasn't getting by asking other people and that I wasn't getting by even praying the way I was praying. So in 2017, I began using the app Headspace, and I don't think I got very far with it. And then soon after that, I accidentally purchased a year's worth of the Calm app. And I absolutely could not stand it because the woman's voice that they use for so many of their meditations is so hard to listen to. So I didn't get very far on the Calm app either. When I really got into meditating for real, was when I read the book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it, especially if you truly are trying to change your life and trying to heal. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today actually come directly from that book because I think it's a really helpful way to start meditating if you've never meditated before. It gives you a lot of insight as to why you're doing it, and it gives you a lot of resources and tools for ways to meditate. But I think it's important to tell you, when I picked up this book and I started doing the meditations, you're supposed to take a month or, 4 weeks to do each part of the meditations, and he teaches you how to do each part of it. And within those 30 days, with me committing to meditating consistently every day, it transformed my life. There were parts of me that, even though I had done energy work on myself and had done energy work with other people, there were parts of me that still had never let go, parts of me that were wrapped up in my own personality, in my own way of thinking and way of being. And those parts were hanging on so tightly until I started meditating. And when I did, it changed my life in less than 30 days. Now, if you could do something that truly would change your life, would put you in a different trajectory, would put you on the right path, would accelerate your healing to the point that in less than 30 days you feel like a new person, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you just commit to sit down and be with yourself for a little bit of time for 30 days? There were probably points in my life where I would have said, no, that feels like a lot of work. But when you've crawled through your own shit for so long and can't find a way out of it, 30 days feels like a real treat. And now that I've really dove all the way into the healing community and I've watched other people heal, I've helped people heal, and I've gone through it myself, there are not many things that heal you as rapidly and change you as quickly as meditating every single day. I don't think there's anything else. Even energy healing is rapid more so than a lot of other forms of healing, and so is breath work. But to me, nothing has ever been so fast in allowing my change and my clarity and everything as meditating every single day. So that's a big reason why I always start with meditation for people who want to change their lives, because I can do all of the energy work on someone. I can put in 100% of my effort, but if they're going home and they're thinking the same thoughts on a regular basis and they're feeling the same emotions on a loop that they've been feeling for years, that their parents felt, that person's life is never going to change from the energy work that I'm doing. All I'm doing when I do energy work on someone, or when you go get Reiki, or you go get some kind of energy work, or you go to a coach, all that we are doing is freeing up your energy so that you can heal yourself. But you have to do the healing. You have to be your own healer. You have to be the one to change your mindset. We cannot do that for you. No one can do that for you, which is part of why a lot of people don't really heal, or they don't really want to heal when it comes down to it, because most people are stubborn or prideful, and they don't want to do anything with the way that they're currently thinking. They would rather just keep thinking the way that they're thinking. So if you are interested in changing, you have to start with your mind. You have to. So meditation can be many things, but in simple terms, it really is just sitting down with yourself, looking inside of yourself, and releasing the things that aren't a part of you, that no longer serve you, that were put there by other people, beliefs, patterns, systems, habits, behaviors that you've taken on that have become part of your regular life, that have become part of your personality, but that are not the truest form of you. So meditation is recognizing those things and letting them go, releasing them, and getting down to the core of who you are, that little tiny spark of divinity in you, and connecting with that. So on a practical level, the reason meditation works is because it helps us to disconnect from this kind of three-dimensional reality, this everyday life, this everyday environment. It helps you to disconnect from the idea that you're in this physical body. It helps you to disconnect from time. And all of those things are triggers for your habitual thought patterns and for your habitual emotional patterns. So if you can pull yourself outside of that, one of my favorite representation of this is actually in Stranger Things, when Eleven is meditating and she kind of goes into that space that looks like a void, right? I don't know. I've only seen the first 2 seasons, so I don't know how that progresses. But when she goes in that space that's like that black void, that is what happens. You have almost this like sensory deprivation when you're meditating, and it allows you to begin to create a new state of being, to begin to create new pathways that are not tied to your present reality or your past experiences. So the cool thing about meditating too is it's not just benefiting you by changing your mind. Of course, most likely if you're listening to me, the reason that you're here is because you're trying to change your life and you're trying to heal. So that's going to be your biggest pull to meditate. But I will say it also does reduce your stress levels. It lowers the cortisol. So that's one of your stress hormones, which allows for relaxation, which is why a lot of people associate meditation with relaxation. But really what we're doing is we're getting your body out of that fight or flight state, and we're getting your nervous system to a state that it can fully release. And I know I've talked about this before, but so often why we hold on to emotional baggage and all of these energies get sort of trapped in our energetic field and our system is because we're in a state of stress so often in our society that we cannot release those emotions because our body, our nervous system is telling us it's not safe to do so. It's kind of like digestion. You digest your food better when you're resting, when your body knows that it's safe. Because if we were out in the wild and running from a tiger, our body's going to be putting all of that energy toward our muscles and our breath and the adrenaline that it's creating to run away from that tiger. It's not going to want to use any of that energy to digest food. The same thing is true about our emotions. If we're in a state of stress where our body thinks we're supposed to be running from a tiger, it's not going to have the resources and it's not going to prioritize releasing our emotions. We don't need to cry when we're running from the tiger. We need to run as fast as we can and get the hell out of there. You know what I'm saying? So allowing your body to enter this state of relaxation is what allows you to kind of get to that little core jelly part of you inside, that soft part of you inside, to really determine what's there, determine what's your own and what needs to be released. This is why also when you meditate on a regular basis, it allows a state of flow in your brain. So you have all sorts of new ideas and creative solutions for things, and problem solving seems really simple and you get a lot of clarity. And that's because your body is in that relaxed state and it's in that awakened state where you can connect with your inner self, your inner guidance, that intuition, and also that divine source energy, that God energy. Something else that's really important to talk about, we talk a lot about thought patterns and we talk a lot about like generational cycles and releasing emotions like during trauma. But something that is not often talked about that needs to be is this idea of emotional addiction. Emotional addiction is a dependency on the feelings that we produce in our body that are connected with the chemicals that are produced. So when you feel emotions, there's actually a biochemical reaction that happens in your body. You produce hormones based on different feelings. What happens is our bodies can become addicted to the production of those hormones. So thoughts and emotions are connected, and repeated thoughts and repeated emotions kind of condition our body to expect those chemical reactions. So just like any other addiction, when our body becomes influenced by those chemicals, it begins to crave more of what it knows. When that happens, those neurochemicals actually reinforce the feeling. So it's kind of like this feedback loop, which makes it challenging to like really break out of it. So if you're used to reacting with anger, your body is going to crave those same chemicals that it releases when you feel anger in every instance or in every reaction. Or if you're used to, for me, it's crying. My emotional addiction is that I cry when I'm overwhelmed or when something is really sensitive to me or when I feel angry, I cry. So it's like my body has become addicted to that way of expressing, and it almost craves it, and it even looks for it when we try to remove that from the picture. So if we try to alter our emotional reactions to something, like just with our willpower and like, oh, I'm not going to cry this time when I get angry. If someone makes me angry, I'm not going to cry. It doesn't really work because our body kind of takes over in those moments and is more powerful than our willpower. Remember, I said in the last episode how big of an impact your subconscious mind has on your life, like your reactions, the way that you live, the choices you make. Your subconscious mind really runs so much of that. And your bodily reactions are included in that subconscious mind. It's just your programming, it's just the way that you're wired. And a lot of those emotional reactions are actually just habitual patterns that you've taken on, and now your body has learned and begun to expect those things. So the key here and the goal with meditation then is to actually reprogram the subconscious mind, to change the subconscious mind, rather than having it just run our life on autopilot and having all of these bodily reactions to things. The idea is to begin to change some of that and to begin to change this personality that we've developed that is not really us. It's just a survival pattern. It's just a survival personality. So through meditation, we can get to that state in our brain that it is able to be changed and we're able to implement new beliefs and new thought patterns. The reason for this is because meditation actually changes our brainwave patterns. So normally when we are functioning in our daily lives, we're operating in beta waves, which are higher frequency brainwaves. These are the waves that are associated with stress and anxiety and just like being fully awake. To change your state and to start to change your brain, like I said, it cannot be in a stress state at all whatsoever. So, in order to change it, we have to bring the brain waves down to a lower frequency. These frequencies are alpha and theta. Theta is kind of the one that is the deepest healing. Alpha is kind of when you're still awake, but you're like fully like relaxed, zoned out, like chill. But then theta is kind of when you're on that next level of so zoned out, you're almost asleep, but you're still conscious. That's the goal. That's the place we want to get to in meditation because that is where the magic happens. So when we get there, when we get to that theta state, we are able to have something called neuroplasticity, which is where the brain is able to form new neural pathways and new neural connections, which allows us to change our habits and our behaviors. Think about your brain like a map, and every road on the map are these neural pathways, these connections that you've made based on habitual patterns and habitual feelings and thoughts. A plus B equals C, we know that, and we can get there on the map. Your brain automatically wants to find the quickest way to the destination. So it will make those pathways even more reinforced, even stronger, even better, the more that you continue in those habitual patterns, which is why something you've done for years is so much harder to break than something you just started last week, or a thought pattern or emotion that you've had for years and a reaction that you've had for years is so much harder to break than anything else. You have to think about your new thought pattern as a dirt road. The more that you travel down the dirt road, the more defined it gets and the more your brain becomes comfortable with taking that route. Neuroplasticity is just allowing the brain to develop those new routes and alternative ways of doing things, which ultimately allows you to have new habits, new experiences, and new reactions. Then, as you've created those dirt paths, those new pathways, there's a concept of visualization or even like mental rehearsal that allows those pathways to become stronger. And eventually, those pathways become just as strong as the original habitual pathways that you've accidentally created in your life. And when this happens, finally, you can create a new habit or a new reaction to something. So again, meditation is what allows us to get that brain into that brain state where it's not a survival-oriented brain in sympathetic nervous system, which we know as fight or flight. We get it into that relaxed state, that parasympathetic nervous system state, where we can rest, we can digest food, we can process emotions, and we can access those deeper states of consciousness where creativity resides, where inspiration resides, and where we can really change our programming. So there are a few different types of meditation. The one I would recommend starting with if you're new to meditating is guided meditation, because it kind of directs your body and your mind through the relaxation process and into that deeper state. If you're not sure how to get into that deeper state, closing your eyes and just kind of like hoping to get there isn't going to really do it at first. So it's really important to have someone to guide you into that deeper state when you're first starting out. So guided meditation means that you are following the voice of a guide, whether that's in person, but usually it's more a voice recording or something like that. And they'll guide you through different instructions like focus on your breath or focus on this part of your body and that kind of thing. Or they'll also give you visualizations. Imagine you're walking through a forest, that kind of stuff. All of that is helpful because it just kind of provides structure and guidance for you when you're really worried about just getting all of your thoughts out of your head, like all of the things you can't stop thinking about, your to-do list, your daily stress, your daily life, your work, whatever it is, your relationships. When you're worried about all of that stuff just kind of bouncing around in your head, it gives you another place to focus on rather than just having like silence or music. And then it also gives you that guidance that is a strategic process of getting your brain into that theta brainwave state. After you've meditated a while, you can kind of almost guide yourself into meditation and just listen to music or even do it in silence. And you have sort of the brain power and the repetition in your system enough to guide yourself through the process. And you kind of know the timing and you know the different cues in your body to observe or to recognize when you've reached different states of brainwave activity. Another type of meditation that you can practice when you're first starting out is something called mindfulness meditation. And this you can do to just music or silence as well. This kind of just focuses on you being in the present moment and observing yourself. So observing your thoughts, observing your feelings, observing any sensations in your body. And the key to this is to observe yourself without judging yourself. It allows you to kind of pull out, get like a bird's eye view of situations, experiences, emotions, the way that you process things. It kind of allows you to just pull out of that reactionary state and get a different view of all of it. A lot of healing and a lot of meditating is getting into a place where you can observe yourself and witness your process without trying to change it, trying to fix it, and without judging it. Our minds as humans tend to go to self-criticism, self-judgment, and criticism and judgment of others when we don't feel adequate about ourselves. So getting into that mindfulness state and being able to pull your perspective out a little bit and look at yourself truthfully opens up a new love and a new care for yourself and your process and your healing journey. Now, some people will do more of mantra meditation or transcendental meditation, which is where you silently repeat a phrase or a mantra. I have actually never practiced that type of meditation. I've never felt drawn to it, but I have heard a lot of people that have had success with it. So if you feel drawn to that, absolutely check that out. And there are so many different resources out there for that type of meditation as well. Another important part of meditation is visualization. And visualization is basically imagining desired outcomes in vivid detail. It's kind of like a mental vision board is really what it is. So especially as a creative, you might already be in the practice of creating like a vision board, but bringing it into meditation with you and creating that mental image of it is really helpful because not only Is it kind of fun to visualize that incredible performance or that specific career goal that you have, like achieving that goal? Not only is that incredible, but also really embodying how you would feel when those things are true is what makes those things happen in your life. We'll get into this in another episode as well. Unfortunately, I just have so much information, I can't fit it all in one episode. But when you feel the emotions that you would feel when you have the things that you want, you attract and call those things into your life. If you are embodying the version of the person that would do that amazing performance or would sell that beautiful piece of art, those things are more likely to happen in your life because you're embodying that energy. So visualization meditation is extremely powerful for that. And a lot of guided meditations also use visualization in that process. One of the big reasons that visualization is such an incredible tool is because your brain doesn't actually know the difference between whether something is real or something is imagined. When you visualize an event, your brain actually sends the same signals to the body as if the event were actually happening. So over time, your brain will start to create new neural pathways based on that imagined event. And this can be positive or negative. You could visualize negative things happening to you over and over, and your brain will begin to respond as if that is true. But if you envision positive things or things that you want in your life or changes you want to make, your brain also will start to believe that those things are true. And ultimately, you act out of your beliefs. Any manifestation, anything that happens in your life comes from that subconscious belief deep inside your brain. It's not the conscious beliefs that we repeat to ourselves over and over. It's what we believe deep inside of us. So by rehearsing these imagined events and visualizing them, our brain starts to decide that those are real, and it starts to give that belief to the subconscious. Now let's kind of get into what to actually do, how to actually meditate. When you are ready to start meditating, you really do want to be in a quiet place, a place where you're not going to be disturbed by your kids or your husband. I actually used to kind of get scared when I would meditate because it's such a sensory deprivation feeling. Like I would have headphones on and then I had like an eye mask that I would wear. So at first it was really, really vulnerable feeling. And my husband and I would actually we had a sign that we would put on the door of the room that said meditation in progress, so that if one or the other of us got home and didn't know the other person was meditating, we wouldn't scare them. So I highly recommend doing that, or just letting your partner or your family or whoever know, I'm going into this room, I'm meditating, I don't want to be disturbed. Thanks. I just think it kind of helps your body fully relax and get into that state where you know you're safe if you're not worried about someone barging in on you and scaring you or just interrupting you and having to start over. If you're new to meditation, I would also recommend wearing an eye mask, which allows you to get into that theta state a little bit quicker. And it also helps from having the temptation to open your eyes, and also just distracts you from any light or anything in the outside world that pulls you away from going inside yourself. If you're going to be meditating without a guide or without a guided meditation, I definitely recommend setting a timer, because you might either fall asleep or it's really, really easy to lose track of time when you are meditating. So definitely set a timer. And then you want to choose a position that you're going to be comfortable in for the entire duration of your meditation, because the less you move, the better. Some people do not feel comfortable just sitting on the floor like you see in like photos of people meditating. It is really cool if you can sit on the ground outside and meditate, but I know that's not really like attainable for everybody. And it's not necessary to really experience the fullness of the practice. To me, it's not even really necessary to sit up except that it does keep you awake. When you lay down and you get into those theta states, it's really, really hard to keep yourself from falling asleep if you're not sitting up. The other thing is you want to meditate somewhere that you don't normally sleep. So it's not best to meditate in your bed because this kind of tells your brain, okay, we're going to sleep now. And you want to avoid that at all costs. You want to be able to stay awake and alert. So meditating in a chair in your room is perfect. Meditating on your couch is great. Or on the floor, on a cushion, totally fine. Even if you're on the floor and you're laying down, it's a little bit less like I'm sleeping, like your body kind of just knows, oh, okay, I'm on the floor. I don't normally sleep on the floor. So you kind of just want to make sure that your body has an idea of what you're doing. And then if you can meditate in the same place every day, like I always meditate in this chair or I always sit here and meditate, that kind of helps your body get into the rhythm and get into the practice of it because as we know, the brain likes things that are known and it likes things that are habitual. So if you are wanting your brain to stay awake throughout the meditation, finding that chair that you always meditate in will teach your brain that when I go here and I sit here and I start meditating, this is what I expect you to do. When you're first starting out, I really recommend not just jumping into a full long meditation. You can start with like a 5 to 10 minute meditation at first. At the most, I would probably do 30 minutes when you're first starting out if you really want to get into it. The best kind of meditations to do when you're first starting out are meditations that just help you practice getting into that theta state. So an example of that would be like a body scan meditation where the guide is telling you to focus on your toes and the sensations you feel in your toes. And now bring your focus to your knees. What sensations do you feel in your knees? That kind of thing. And you kind of do that for a good majority of the meditation. And it really just relaxes your body and teaches your body how to begin relaxing that way. And that's why also some people like to say, focus on your breath because it really brings you back to that centered place. It just gives you something to focus on that's not your to-do list and the other things in your life. So focusing on your breath when you're first starting out is a really great way to just get into that parasympathetic state pretty easily and pretty naturally. I want to say too, it is not necessarily easy when you first start. And even as my journey with meditation has progressed, sometimes it will be easier to get into that brainwave state that I want to get into. And sometimes it will feel like a challenge. It kind of depends. Our energy ebbs and flows and our attention ebbs and flows. And some days we're more focused than others. And some days we're more emotional than others. So that's okay. It will not be perfect. You will not always be totally focused, and that is fine. The important thing is just sitting down and committing to doing it every day. When you're first starting, you might feel restless at first or just impatient. You might also feel doubtful that this is even working or anything is happening. Which again is why I think guided meditations are really helpful because it kind of pulls you out of that thinking part of your brain and just allows you to focus on what someone else is saying. But people always tell me, like, what if I can't stop thinking? I can't get my brain to turn off, to shut off. And I just want to say, like, it's normal to have thoughts during meditation. That is normal. Again, we're not removing the thoughts. We're not trying to empty the mind. That is really not the goal. The goal is to observe the thoughts that you're having. So if you have a thought, as soon as you catch yourself having it, you go, interesting, I had that thought. Okay. And then maybe a little bit later, that thought comes back. It's the same thought. I had that thought again. Interesting. And then later you can kind of analyze, now that you're aware that you've had the same thought 15 times in 5 minutes, you can sit down and analyze, well, why did I have that thought? Why is that coming up so much? What's underneath that? What's the emotion attached to that? Is there a fear attached to that? Is there anxiety attached to that? And why? So over time, as you practice, there is less and less of kind of that mind chatter and that noise. And your brain understands what state you're getting into, and the mind naturally starts to quiet down. And then the things will still pop up again, and you'll be able to witness them and observe them and say, oh, there's that thing. Oh, that's a new thing. And just kind of let it pass. But again, you don't need to stop thinking. Imagine your mind like a river, and it's just moving through. Everything's just moving through, and you're just watching it, and you're just observing what's moving down the river, what's cycling through again, all of that. So again, there is no doing it right. There are ways that help you to get more focused and to get more into the brainwave state that you want to get into to change your thoughts. But there isn't really a right or wrong. It's just all about observation and taking the time to slow down and taking the time to be with yourself to discover what is really you deep down. If you're afraid that you won't be able to quiet your mind or stay focused, don't worry about that right now. It will come in time, and all of that is part of it. The other fear that I think people sometimes have is that they don't want to actually confront the things that are inside of them. There might be some anxiety about dealing with unresolved emotional issues or past traumas or regrets or just things in your past that you feel guilty or shameful about. And so if you are worried about that, I just want to say that it's better to have that stuff come out when you're in a relaxed state, you're in a quiet state, when you are loving yourself by allowing yourself to look at yourself with that bird's eye view perspective, that witnessing perspective, rather than the judgment and the criticism. And if you do find that judgment and criticism coming up with those things, that is also something to analyze. It's all part of just unraveling each piece of why we are the way that we are and how to change it. A lot of times too, those emotional things that are coming up, those regrets, those uncomfortable thoughts or emotions, a lot of times they're not what we think they are. Like we think that it's anger about something, but really it's that we felt betrayed. Or we think that we're such a horrible person for feeling this way or thinking that thought, but really it's because we feel alone or we feel sad or we feel insecure or we feel embarrassed. Usually there's something else underneath all of it. And that is the whole point of getting into meditation and sweeping off the layers of the things that are covering up the truth about you, the truth about your experience. Because that is why you can't heal, because you haven't gotten to the truth yet. Some of you might also have a fear of change. If you do, you're probably not going to meditate. That's just the truth. If you're afraid of changing, your body is probably going to sabotage, your brain is going to sabotage your attempt to meditate. Because you have to get into a point where you really do want to change. So if it's you, if you have a fear of change, that really needs to be looked at first. Why is this fear coming up? Why don't you want to change? Why don't you want to heal? What's behind all of that? Do you think it's pointless? Do you think it's not going to work? You know, what is behind that? Because otherwise, you really probably aren't going to get very far with meditation because your brain's not going to let you do it. A lot of people make excuses like they don't have the time to meditate, they can't concentrate. I mean, I can't concentrate is like the absolute biggest excuse. And it's usually by the people who need to meditate the most. I was that person. I was like, meditating doesn't work for me. And I had tried 3 different guided meditations that I didn't really like that much, and I really wasn't that committed. If you sit down and are actually committed to taking your power back and getting to know yourself and confronting all your fears, if you're committed to that, meditating absolutely works, and it works so fast that you'll be sorry you never tried it sooner. Truly. Really. I promise. I think there's also skepticism about the benefits. And again, usually that is by people that have really never tried it. Because if you've done it and you've done it fully, you know that it is effective. I mean, you can't refute its effectiveness if you've experienced it. And then there's kind of a group of people that feel bored or impatient, or they feel physically uncomfortable while they're meditating and that kind of thing. And for you, I would say maybe just start with a shorter one, a smaller one, or find a meditation that you do find engaging. I had a client once who I would give her a meditation every week, and they were short. They were 5 minutes, and she wouldn't do it, and she couldn't do it. And I was like, why don't you want to do it? I mean, they're so short. And I'm not asking to do it every day, just once a week. And she kept saying, I don't know, I don't like it. I don't resonate with the ones you're giving me. And I thought they were great because they were so like beginner friendly, and they were like just really simple and easy and relaxing. And I said, well, okay, why don't you go on YouTube, go on Spotify, wherever, and find some that you find interest in, that you think sound cool or seem interesting to you, or is like a guided meditation for a concept that you're interested in exploring. She's like, okay. And she went and she found a meditation from a guy that she already kind of followed and liked and trusted, and she started doing that meditation easily. And so what that taught me is that sometimes you just have to resonate with the meditation that you're doing. So if you haven't done one that you like yet, especially a guided meditation, but the same with music, keep looking and keep playing around with different guides and teachers and meditation apps and whatever until you find one that you do actually like doing. And then if you're still bored or you're still uninterested and you can't find one, then again, I think we have to go back to, do you really want to change? Do you want to change? Because change comes from inside of yourself. So as you're implementing meditation into your life, one of the best ways to do it is to kind of attach it to a habit you already have. So maybe you do it every day after you brush your teeth in the morning. Maybe you do it every day when you get home from work and your kids are not home yet. Just finding kind of that time every single day that becomes habitual so you don't have to think about it and it's just part of your routine is really key for adding this into your life. And if you are really interested in more of the science behind it, I definitely recommend, like I said, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I also recommend The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, who is a scientist and speaker, and he kind of talks about the connection between science and spirituality. So I definitely recommend either of those books if you want to dive a little bit deeper into why this works and some of the processes that they recommend. In particular, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is just so good because there is a step-by-step process at the end of the book that helps you really get into not just meditating, but meditating for change, like meditating for changing your habits and your thought patterns and your emotional reactions rather than just meditating to connect with your inner self. I think both are really, really important, but sometimes if you haven't unraveled a bit of yourself first and gotten rid of some of those patterns and habits that are holding you back, you won't be able to connect with yourself as deeply. And also you might not have the belief that you can because you've got so much piled up on top of there. I hope that makes sense. So I definitely recommend that. If that doesn't resonate with you, definitely just find one that does. Find some meditations, some guided meditations that do. I also am providing you with a meditation this week inside my paid subscription, and it's not going to be the only one. It's the first of many. So get in there, check that out, and there's also some great energy healing sessions and resources in there for you as well. And just allow yourself to play, to have fun, just be explorative with this process of meditation, process of changing yourself, and of truly finding yourself and connecting with yourself on a deep level. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I love connecting with you every single week, and I hope I'm providing you valuable information that you can take and use to change your life. Love you so much. Talk to you next week.